Michelle Craig is standing by for that conversation. She's joined by the Higher Education Minister Blade Nzimande. Hello again, Mish.
Thanks for that, Dudu. Yes, indeed. Let's go straight into our conversation with the Higher Education Minister who joins us here in studio, Dr. Blade Nzimande. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. There are a number of issues we can touch on. Shall we start with the issues that seem to be plaguing Fort Hare University? And perhaps, Minister, you can give us an update with where your department is insofar as the multiple challenges that seem to be coming up there.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for inviting me, and good afternoon to you and to your viewers and listeners. One thing I always remind people is that the post-school education and training sector is part of wider society. So the likelihood is that all the problems that are happening in society are also going to find expression there. Gender-based violence, the issues of crime and criminality, as you say about the situation of Fort Hare. Of course, what we are preoccupied with right now is registration of students, and that the academic year starts peacefully and in a stable manner so that we actually have a successful academic year. That's what I'm dealing with at the moment, which is largely your National Student Financial Aid Scheme. The good news, of course, is that we're going to fund every NSFAS qualifying student who has been accepted, despite some of the glitches and the challenges, but we do have money as government, which, by the way, is President Ramaphosa's continued commitment to increasing access to education. The one advantage we have in South Africa, by the way, is that our funding of education is very, very high, possibly higher than many developing countries, even higher than some of the developed countries. The challenge we have is how do we translate those resources to have the kind of impact that we would like to have. Indeed, we are making some impact, but it's still less than the kind of impact that we could actually be having in terms of, in my sector, for instance, the throughput rate, the pass rate, and so on. I am also responsible for science, I must say. And South Africa, of course, is one of the highly respected countries when it comes to science. As you saw, our scientists at the height of COVID-19, we are also participating now in the development of hydrogen fuel cells as an alternative and to existing forms of energy that we actually have. And we are also doing quite a lot on that, despite the fact that my Department of Science and Innovation does not have much money. But given what we have and the scientists that we have and the science infrastructure that we have, we are playing a very important role in terms of supporting South Africa's economy and its modernization. For instance, one of the things we are doing now as a department, that not many people know about it, is that we are doing carbon capture, in the coal-fired power stations of Eskom to actually convert what we capture. For instance, it doesn't go out into the air, but we capture it and also convert it into green ammonia, out of which you could actually have hydrogen fuel cells.
I need to do some research on that, Minister.
We are doing research, but more than just research. We've got practical. I hope one day you could come, could invite you. We've got practical demonstration of the things that we are actually beginning to do now to support this whole challenge of energy that we are facing in South Africa at the moment.
Yeah, you mentioned that, the challenges we see in society will translate to the challenges we have on institutions of higher learning. You're talking about the murder of Ntokoza Xaba, that 21-year-old student who was murdered at TUT. I want to hone in on TUT again, or rather the issues like the ones we face at TUT, and take it again to Fort Hare University. Because when you talk about the funding, you talked about us having the most funding for education than even some developed countries.
Yes.
And is that not the reason why the Vice-Chancellor at Fort Hare may have had this attempt on his life? His bodyguard was killed in that incident. It's being called an attempted assassination. He says because he's trying to clean up Fort Hare.
Well, we do have the problem of corruption. As I say, society is actually infested with corruption. That's why the president is leading this effort to fight against corruption. So it's happening also in our institutions. And what we are doing not just in response to Forte, because Forte is not the only institution that faces this problem, nor is it the first. We have got college principals who have got bodyguards, bigger than any minister that you will find because of the challenges that they are actually facing. The useful discussion that I had when I visited Forte, coming from the workers, and the SRC leaders, we agreed that maybe what we need, if communities are building community policing forums, we also need to build similar kinds of structures. Alice campus in Forte has got more than 11,000 students. That's a whole community, which is there for 9.5, 10 months of the year. So it needs to behave and act as a community. It's fine to work with police, but often police come after the fact, like the unfortunate death, again, of Nontogozo Club, another student. So we need to actually create mechanisms to prevent these things from happening and to mainstream safety and security issues into the lives and activities of SRCs, of shop stewards, of worker leaders, and so on. It is unfortunate because universities are not security institutions. Colleges are not security institutions. But since we are faced with this, there is no choice now except to work together. That's why I'm even saying to vice chancellors and college principals, lead, but don't lead yourselves. Lead the rest of the constituencies to be able to work together. University of Zululand, some few years ago, a dean was shot and killed because he discovered a scam of people who were selling certificates, university certificates. Fortunately, we have stopped that. The reason why University of Zululand succeeded in doing it, the vice chancellor led from the front and said, I'm going to engage all the stakeholders. And not just talk about it, but engage the stakeholders, work together with them to actually say, how do we defeat that?
Let's talk about the State of the Nation address, which is why you're here with us this afternoon, Minister. It's been called a moment of crisis that we find ourselves in as a country for various reasons: load shedding, the economy, gender-based violence, our unemployment rate, the list goes on and on. Is this going to be a different State of the Nation address for Cyril Ramaphosa? How should the President be rising to this moment that we're facing as a country?
Of course, Michelle, I can't speak for the President.
In your view?
Yes, in my view is that the mood that I'm sensing, I'm getting in Cabinet, from the President himself leading from the front, is that indeed we must admit that we are facing a crisis. As a country, there are many crisis points. Therefore, we need to be bold. We need to lead from the front. We need to set an example as cabinet ministers in working hard. The kinds of messaging that I hope will come out of the President today will reflect that. The seriousness of the situation that we face, like load shedding, the necessity to actually act on it, and for the President to commit to say, as government, this is what we are going to say. But President is also normally good in saying, yes, as government we're going to do this, but we're not going to win the war if we are all by ourselves as government. What should all South Africans be doing? How should we be joining in turning our country for the positive, whilst government is playing its leading role in many respects, not least the media? We need you as partners, to be able to deal with all the challenges that we are actually facing. So I am hoping that the President is going to come across confident, bold, acknowledging the challenges that we face and laying a way forward, to actually say, what will we as government do, and then what should South Africans in their own spaces where they find themselves, what should they do? Because it's our country, all of us. We have a duty to work together in order to turn the country around.
Absolutely. Except me in the media and the person watching at home, we're not there making policies, Minister.
Yes, but we have a huge role to play, Michelle. That is why I'm hoping the President is going to emphasize this. You have a huge role to play because we are communicating to the country every day. The message is, we are not saying, step over the issues and not deal with them critically, but the messaging that you put across hopefully also must be able to give hope that despite the challenges that we have, as a country can rise against this. We are heroic people, by the way, South Africans. Let's not forget about that.
I think that heroism might be tiring out now.
I don't think so. I think that we just need a way of leading the country in a way that we re-energize the people. I don't think that, if you look at the fact that people are demonstrating, are standing up and all that, what it means is that the energy is there. We need to direct that energy to be able to work together to actually tackle the problems that we have. I don't think that South Africans tire on anything, the way I see them. In my sector, from my experience, I've got a very active student population, that is very alert about the challenges that we face. And one of my tasks is to provide leadership to be able to mobilize those energies of young people, to be able to ensure that the money we put into education translates into the kind of outcomes that we want.
Yeah. I must say, from my vantage point, I see a tired population, Minister. I see people who are living below the breadline, people who haven't had jobs for 20 years, people who are still waiting for a house since 1994. This is a big moment for the President, which is what I'm trying to say. And something needs to be different about what he says tonight.
I agree with you entirely. Something will have to be different. A message will have to come today to say, these are the actions that as a country we need to take. I'm confident that the President will actually rise to the occasion. I'm not underestimating the difficulties, by the way, facing the people. But South Africans historically have never carried themselves as victims. If we carried ourselves as victims of apartheid, wouldn't we have been able to actually liberate this country? It was a difficult situation of oppression, of blood, of a criminal regime that was just making us not to breathe at all. But we managed to say, much as we are being persecuted, but we are not going to carry this badge of victimhood. We are actors that can actually be able to change their situation. Someone like the President must send a message, be able to commit to a leadership role on our side as government, and then be able... Every segment of our communities, by the way, has got leaders who I'm very confident can actually be able to rise to the occasion. In fact, this moment in our country calls for that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Dr. Blade Nzimande is the Higher Education Minister. Let me thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us, Minister. I know you're very busy.
Thank you very much,
Building up to the state of the